Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today, we're going somewhere you probably wouldn't expect me to go.
Oh,
True crime.
interesting.
Yeah. So get this. We're going to be looking at Woman of the Hour, the Netflix film.
Mhm.
And, it's directed by and stars Anna Kendrick.
Right.
It's based on the Rodney Alcala case.
Wow.
Yeah. So she did this really insightful interview on the Crime Junkie podcast.
Yeah.
So we're going to be diving into that.
Oh, cool.
See what kind of fascinating nuggets we can pull from it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's interesting how this whole project even came to be.
Yeah.
Kendrick initially wasn't really into directing,
hmm
but then she had this personal experience with trauma, and it really changed her perspective on true crime, and then that's kind of what led her to this film.
It makes sense, though. I mean, if you think about it, sometimes it takes a personal experience with something, to really kind of shift your perspective and make you want to delve deeper into it.
Yeah, she initially saw directing as like outside her comfort zone, and then after that trauma, she just becomes almost obsessed with understanding, why people commit violent crimes.
Right.
It's like she's trying to find meaning in this darkness, maybe even a way to protect herself.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, it definitely sounds like she was using true crime as a way to examine her own trauma. I mean, she mentions being really captivated by the Chris Watts case,
Yes.
trying to wrap her head around how someone like that, seemingly so ordinary,
All right.
could do something so horrific. And I think that shows that her interest went beyond just, casual curiosity. It was personal for her.
Okay, so let's talk about the film itself, Woman of the Hour.
Yeah.
And while it is inspired by the Rodney Alcala case, it doesn't just rehash all the facts,
Right.
Kendrick, she chose to focus on the women
Oh, wow.
impacted by Alcala.
Okay.
And she wanted to capture that universal experience of what it's like to be a woman and try to stay safe,
I see.
So I think this approach challenges that often, exploitative nature of true crime,
Huh?
where they're always focusing on the killer
Yeah, right.
rather than the victims. And what's interesting is that Kendrick actually donated all of her earnings from the film,
Oh, wow.
to like RAINN and National Center for Victims of Violent Crime,
That's good.
which I think speaks volumes about,
Yeah.
her commitment to using her platform responsibly
Yeah.
and not just profiting from this tragedy.
I mean, she could have just, made the film and moved on, but she chose to really think about the ethical implications of telling this story. And it's, not just the donation,
Right.
but also, like, she included very specific scenes
Yeah.
that resonate deeply with women.
Yeah. Like what?
So, for example, there's this one scene where her character is on a date with Alcala.
Okay.
And you can just feel that sense of unease, the subtle ways in which she's managing the situation,
Yeah.
It's like that fear that many women feel when they're in similar situations, just constantly calculating.
Yeah. Trying to figure out how to stay safe.
Right. Exactly.
It's like walking a tightrope,
yeah.
trying to read the situation
Yeah, exactly.
without making things worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I think a lot of women, unfortunately, can relate to,
I agree.
even if they haven't been in that exact situation.
Right?
It just speaks to, women are often taught to prioritize men's comfort over their own safety.
Absolutely. And what's refreshing is that Kendrick doesn't try to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
She shows how complex these situations can be
Mm-hmm.
and that there aren't always easy solutions for survival.
Right. It can just come down to luck sometimes,
Sometimes.
which
Yeah.
makes it even more disturbing when you think about how Alcala was able to evade capture for so long.
Oh, yeah.
All those systemic failures, like he was released repeatedly, even though there were red flags.
Unbelievable.
I know he even worked at the LA Times after serving time for assault
It's crazy.
under his real name.
What?
It's mind-boggling.
I know. And that's why I think it was so smart of Kendrick to consult with the prosecutor and detective
Yes.
who finally brought Alcala to justice.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to understand why they were so frustrated.
Yeah.
How they felt that the system failed those women.
Right.
And I think that adds a whole other layer to the film.
Yeah.
Because it shows how those biases and that negligence allowed him to keep preying on women
Right.
for so long.
It's a really important point to highlight.
Yeah.
And it's something that we need to keep talking about.
Absolutely.
Because these systemic issues are still present today.
Very true.
And it's up to us to hold those in power accountable
I agree.
and to demand better protection for the vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think Kendrick's film is a powerful reminder of that.
Yeah,
It's a call to action in a way.
it is. And it's a testament to her, her commitment to using her platform for good
Absolutely.
and to, shining a light on these important issues.
Exactly. And I think it's also a great example of how true crime can be more than just entertainment.
Yeah.
It can be a way to educate people, to raise awareness,
Right.
inspire change.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really powerful thing.
It is. And, it's something that we should all strive for
Yeah, I agree.
when we're engaging with true crime.
Yeah.
To be mindful of the victims,
Yeah.
to be critical of the systems that allow these crimes to happen, and to use our understanding to make a positive impact.
Absolutely. And I think Kendrick's film is a great example of how to do that.
It is. And, it's a film that I think everyone should see.
Yeah, I agree.
So if you haven't seen it yet,
Definitely check it out.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's worth watching.
And we'll be back after the break to continue our deep dive into Woman of the Hour and Anna Kendrick's journey into the world of true crime.
Sounds good. Can't wait.
So stay tuned. So we were just talking about, those systemic failures and how Alcala was able to, evade capture for so long.
Right.
And it just reminds you that even if you're more aware, these systems don't always protect people.
Right. And this actually kind of goes back to Kendrick's own experience with an abusive relationship, which she talks about in the interview.
Okay.
Yeah, and she talks about this moment where she stopped trying to argue with her partner and she just started observing him, like taking in his worldview
Wow.
without any filters.
So she was just gathering information.
Yeah, it's like she went into this analytical mode.
Like a detective.
Almost like a detective. Yeah, gathering evidence to try and understand what was happening.
Yeah. What do you think caused that change?
Well, maybe she realized that she needed to protect herself emotionally.
Right.
By detaching and observing, she could gather information without being overwhelmed by the situation.
Right.
Could have been like a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
To assess the situation and ultimately, leave.
Right.
Yeah.
And that analytical approach kind of went into her research on true crime, too.
Yeah.
Especially with the Chris Watts case.
Mm-hmm.
Remember how she was consumed by trying to understand his motivations?
Yeah. How does someone go from, loving husband and father to doing something so horrific?
It's crazy.
Chris Watts' case is just baffling.
It is.
I mean, he had this public persona,
Yeah.
and then his actions were just the complete opposite.
Yeah. You would never expect it.
It makes you question everything you think you know about people.
Yeah. And Kendrick seems to think that shame is a big factor in these cases.
Okay.
She believes that both Chris Watts and her abuser saw themselves as victims in a way.
Interesting.
Like their actions were driven by this need to avoid feeling bad.
So they didn't want to face the consequences.
Exactly. No matter what.
Wow, that's a pretty compelling theory.
It is. And I think it connects to, how men are pressured to maintain this image, to never be vulnerable.
Right. They can't appear weak.
And it creates this dangerous environment where they feel trapped.
And that can lead to some pretty destructive behaviors.
Exactly. And that pressure can show up in really subtle ways.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Even outside of violence.
Like what?
Well, Kendrick shares this story about how when she was 19,
Okay.
a casting director made inappropriate comments about her body.
Ugh, it's so common, though.
I know, it's awful.
It's like women's bodies are just objects to be judged.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even though Woman of the Hour is set in the 70s,
Yeah.
these themes are still relevant today.
For sure.
The power dynamics, the manipulation.
The constant worry about safety.
It resonates with women across generations.
Absolutely. And I think it was really important that Kendrick included those smaller moments of discomfort and violation.
Yeah.
It shows that abuse isn't just about physical violence.
Right.
It's about how power can be misused, how it can make someone feel small and powerless.
It's like she's using the film to reclaim her own story.
Yeah, to give a voice to experiences that are often ignored.
Exactly. And by doing so, she's creating a space for dialogue.
Right.
So we can confront these issues and challenge the systems that allow them to continue.
That's so important.
It is. And it brings us back to Kendrick's journey to becoming a director.
Yeah.
Because she initially resisted it.
She did.
She was like, it's not for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting how this project, which came from such personal experiences, pushed her to step outside of her comfort zone and embrace this new challenge.
It's like it evolved organically.
Right. She was attached as an actress for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then when it finally came together, they didn't have a director. And she was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Someone else is going to come in and tell me what this film is about.
After all this time.
Right after she had spent years thinking about it.
It was like a light bulb moment.
Yeah. She realized she had to do it.
Take control of the story.
And it was a risk,
No, Yeah.
Pitching herself for the job.
Admitting she didn't have experience, but she had the passion.
And the understanding.
Yeah, it was bold.
But it paid off.
It did. And it shows how committed she was to making sure the film reflected her vision.
Her vision. Yeah.
And honored the story.
And you can see that commitment in every aspect of the film. From the details to the production schedule.
Right.
They filmed the whole thing in 24 days.
What?
24 days.
That's insane.
For a period piece?
With multiple locations.
I know, it's crazy.
She must thrive under pressure.
She's an adrenaline junkie.
Wow.
She likes to push herself and her team.
And I bet that contributed to the film's energy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And emotional impact.
It all came together.
It did. It's fascinating.
It is.
How her experiences and personality created this powerful film.
It makes you wonder how this project changed her relationship with true crime.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a casual consumer before.
Right.
But her personal experiences seem to have taken it to a whole other level.
It's like she was looking for answers, trying to understand the darkest parts of humanity so she could make sense of her own trauma.
Right, and that deep dive into true crime, especially with the Chris Watts case, allowed her to explore those dark themes safely.
In a controlled environment.
Yeah, and maybe she was also seeking knowledge as a form of self-defense.
Like if she understood the patterns, she could avoid becoming a victim.
It's a way to feel in control.
In a world that feels so chaotic.
Exactly, and for Kendrick, it seems like it was a way to process her trauma, too.
Yeah, to find meaning in the pain.
By immersing herself in these stories, she could channel her emotions into something creative.
And cathartic.
Exactly.
So Woman of the Hour becomes more than just a film.
Right, it's like a culmination of her journey.
Her exploration of darkness and her search for understanding.
And in telling the story, she's offering a unique perspective.
Yeah.
Informed by her own experiences and her research.
Yeah, she doesn't shy away from the tough questions.
No, she tackles the ethics of true crime head on. The systemic failures.
And she centers the voices of the women.
Who are often silenced.
It's powerful stuff.
It is, and it reminds us that true crime can be more than just entertainment.
Right.
It can be a tool for education. For empathy.
And for social change.
Exactly. And it can also be a way for people to process their own experiences.
Right.
And find meaning in the face of adversity.
And as we move into the last part of our deep dive, it's worth thinking about how this conversation has changed your view of Anna Kendrick and her work.
Yeah, has it shown you a new side of her as an artist and a person?
And what does it mean for celebrities to use their platforms
to talk about these sensitive topics?
We'll explore these questions and more after this.
So we were talking about how Kendrick's journey really, shaped how she sees true crime.
Yeah, I think what really stuck with me was how open she was about her own experience with abuse. Like it takes guts to share something so personal.
Yeah, especially when you're in the public eye.
Right, it's not the usual perfect celebrity image.
Definitely not. She's showing that even people who seem to have it all can struggle.
And by doing that, I think she's making other people feel less alone.
For sure, it's okay to not be okay.
And it shows how true crime is changing.
How so?
It's not just about, the shocking headlines anymore.
Right.
It's more about the human impact.
The ripple effects.
Exactly.
Like Kendrick's film does that.
Yeah. She uses the Alcala case, but it's really about bigger issues.
Power dynamics.
Gender roles.
How women have to navigate a world that's not always safe.
Exactly. And she does it in a way that's not exploitative.
Right. She's not trying to just shark people.
No, she focuses on the women and their experiences.
Gives them a voice.
And her donating her earnings shows a lot about her intentions.
Yeah, she didn't want to make money off of the people's pain.
It's about using her platform for good.
Supporting those who need it.
It shows that true crime can be more than just passively watching something. We can think critically.
Question what we're seeing.
And use what we learn to advocate for change.
Woman of the Hour isn't just about a serial killer,
It's about surviving and being resilient.
Speaking up against power.
Challenging those systems that allow abuse to happen. And making a world where women feel safe.
And strong.
And it all comes back to the power of stories.
Yeah.
By sharing her own story and looking at true crime in a thoughtful way.
Ethical.
Yeah, Kendrick starts a conversation.
Makes us think about these tough issues.
And that's why this deep dive has been so interesting.
It's not just about the facts of the case.
It's about understanding human nature and how we treat each other.
Our responsibility to make the world a better place.
And as we wrap this up, think about how this has changed your view of true crime.
Can it be more than just entertainment?
Can it make us more aware and empathetic?
Even empowered?
And how can we make sure these stories are told the right way?
Focused on justice, not just sensationalism.
We hope this deep dive has given you something to think about.
As you continue exploring the world of true crime.
Thanks for joining us.